Hey guys, welcome to the Wood Craftsman. Today I'm going to show you a modification that I did to a piece of finishing equipment that we have here in the shop. And basically I'm converting a Kremlin 1014 piston pump system from a 5-gallon pail setup to a 1-gallon can. Recently I acquired a third Kremlin 1014. If you've watched some of my past videos, you know that I've got a couple here that I used in the past and they're still using them now for their dedicated purpose of spraying vinyl sealer and high solids pre-cat lacquer. Basically I wanted a third one for testing new technologies such as waterborne and water-based. I've got a couple gallons here that I got from a couple different manufacturers that I want to spray out and just see how well they perform. I did some testing here a couple years ago with some Sherwin-Williams Chem Aqua Plus, and I was fairly surprised on as far as how well it performed out. So I was actually quite pleased. So I want to reevaluate some of these. I got a couple of Valspar coatings I want to try, and then I also want to retry the Sherwin-Williams Chem Aqua Plus. And then if anyone else wants me to try some, I'll probably look at it as well. So the mod I'm going to show you is a modification I did to the Kremlin 1014 to work with 1-gallon cans. Okay, so this is the third Kremlin 1014 I got. Now, you may call me a Kremlin addict, and I'll tell you why. I first knew about these in the mid-90s. They've been around a little bit before then. I think they're around probably in the late 80s already. This is a 10-to-1 known as a 1014. They had a smaller version, this called an 807, and that was actually an 8-to-1. I don't really remember how long they were around, but they seem to be quite robust. This 10-to-14 has been around probably from the early 90s all the way up until I think 2011 or 2012. They discontinued it, and then they recently brought it back again, I think in 2013 or 2014, somewhere around there, and they made a couple of changes to it as improvements. So if you're not familiar with the Kremlin system, they're actually made in France, so it's a European company. They do things a little bit differently than what you typically see with an air-assisted airless. First of all, most all the fittings on this pump is metric or British, so British MPT versus just a NPT. Other than that, parts are readily available. It's just, you know, finding the right distributor that's going to give you a good price on it, because I will say that replacement parts are expensive. But what I can tell you with the two pumps that I have right now, I got one that I got a few years ago that literally looked like they were pumping tar with it. It was just nasty. I didn't think I'd get it clean. I took a chance on it, and a weekend in solvent, and it actually came out really nice and clean. So I didn't have any complaints there. And the throat seal leaks on it, the air motor leaks, and it just keeps on pumping. So it's kind of like a Timex. Takes a licking and keeps on ticking. So so here is the modification, the most thing I want to share with you. When you get these, most of them have a long pickup tube that has a 90-degree bend on it, and they're probably about 18 inches long. They typically come with a black, blue, or neon green pickup tube hose. So what I did is I actually had taken the original pickup tube hose assembly and actually cut the pinch clamp down here by this fitting. This fitting, by the way, is a metric fitting. It's actually an M8 by 1.25. It's stainless steel. This whole pump is stainless steel. But the actual fitting on the end, the nipple itself, is actually a metric, but it's equivalent to about 3/8, maybe just slightly over. So the tubing you can use is 3/8 inside diameter. Now the tubing itself, originally I had ordered a piece of Tygon high resistance chemical tubing from McMaster Carr, where I also got the rest of these fittings from. It was a nice piece of tubing, but it was very soft where you could actually kink it very easily, which I was really disappointed in, because with this bend here it would already be kinked. So I realized it wasn't going to work. So I went to a local farm supply and found this chemical resistant tubing. It's either a polyurethane or a PVC, I'm not sure. It's just a braided tube, chemical resistant, and I think I paid like $7 or $6 for a 10-foot roll. So I have, you know, a few more. I think it's about 2.5 feet here. So I got another 4 or 3 more cuts I can make out of it to replace this if I need it. Now, the other end of this is all stainless steel. We're going to start here. This is a 304 stainless steel, 3/8 inch barb to 3/8 inch female NPT pipe thread fitting. This is a 3/8 inch by 10 inch stainless steel 3/16 nipple. And then at the very bottom here is a nylon suction strainer with, I think it's a 304 20 mesh stainless steel screen. So, and that's pretty much the business end of it. Now, you might be wondering, well, why did you use stainless steel? Anytime you're working with a pre-catalyzed material, a post-catalyzed material, a waterborne or water-based coating, it's really highly recommended to use stainless steel fittings for the corrosion resistance. Now, some of the airless pumps out there, like the Graco 395, which I used to use at the very beginning, is a chrome-plated fittings. The rod and some of the other fittings within the pump are actually chrome plated. And over a period of time, you can actually start pitting that chrome plating. And then if you're really unlucky, you actually start to get discoloration in the coating. And if you're spraying, like say for example, a paint or a clear, that discoloration can actually show up. So I've learned that the hard way, and it's you know, not really a pretty sight. So I've kind of learned that everything that I work with here in the shop when it comes to spraying a coating is stainless steel. The cost as far as, you know, galvanized or carbon steel compared to stainless steel is probably about twice, but it's going to last probably 10 times longer. This whole assembly here, this piece of tubing and or the roll of tubing and these 3 fittings, I probably have a total of $50 invested in it. These here alone, I want to say this adapter was 15 bucks. This one here is probably closer to 20 bucks for the nipple, and like another 5 bucks for the strainer, and then some shipping and handling. So these all came from McMaster Car, and I'll put the part numbers in the video here. So that is the mod that it's just kind of nice for, you know, 1 gallon cans. Might still have to make something to keep it from tipping over when the can gets lower in volume, but it definitely beats the large pickup tube that these come with. So when I got this pump also, it didn't come with a stand. So I had a local welding shop make this stand for me. It's kind of a knockoff of the original stand you could get for the Kremlin 1014. I've never physically seen one. I just found images on Google, and I just had the welding shop send them a picture with my dimensions on it and said, hey, can you make something like this? And they did. It cost me like $20. So I just painted it white and put some caps on the bottom here, put a bicycle handle on top, and then I actually put these little feet on the bottom as well. They actually have a screw that go through the bottom that drill into the bottom of the metal tubing. Okay, hoses. Here's another real quick, interesting thought for you. How many of you guys out there have bought a piece of airless equipment or airless, whether it's a Kremlin or a CA Technologies or Binks or something like that, and when you get the hose set, you have something like this, okay? Now this is actually not a very bad hose. This is 3/16, by the way. This is the hose set that actually came with this pump. When the guy sold this, he took the hose set I think he had on this one originally, which might have been an 1/8 inch, and then included this with the purchase. It's never been used. The only thing I did was I actually put it in the plastic tubing here, which we'll talk about shortly. This is branded by Kremlin Rexon, but I believe this is actually made by a company called Exit Flex, and I believe it's called a PA series. And I'll be talking about that here very shortly as far as the differences. I used to run the Exit Flex PA series as well at the very beginning. This is an 1/8 inch version, As you can see here, it's flexible but still fairly stiff. It's by far better than the 1/4 inch airless hoses out there, and even better than the 3/16, but it still has, you know, quite a bit of wiriness to it. This one I actually took out of service a couple years ago. I just kind of didn't really like it to an extent where it was still kind of wiry. It was kind of a tripping hazard. The one that I got on here, this is the one that's actually very flexible. This is also a hose made by Exit Flex. This is what they call a KX series versus the yellow one I showed you was called a PA series. The big difference between the two is not so much the color, it's actually how the hose is made. The KX series has a working pressure of 3,200 PSI versus the PA series has a working pressure of 5,075 PSI. So the difference is in the braiding that they use to braid the tube itself to keep it from bursting. But this here, let's see if I grab a wrench here. Look at this. All right, that is way more flexible than the yellow. There's a huge difference. Now, if you guys have looked at the Graco Merkur ES, which is kind of the competition to the Kremlin 1014 here, this is the exact hose that they use on the Merkur ES. And in fact, the company I got this from, which is KM Coating in New Jersey, this is the exact hose that Graco uses on their Merkur ES. It's an 1/8 inch. The difference is the fittings are 1/4 inch MPT versus the fittings for the Kremlin are JIC5, which is a metric. So yeah, this is an extremely flexible hose. I don't think I've ever seen anything this flexible. So the 2/8 inches side by side, there's a world of difference. The fluid hose, or the air hose, let's briefly talk about that. If I can get the spring guard off of here. All right. This is, color doesn't matter, but what this actually is, this is a piece of polyurethane air or fluid tubing. Typically it's air and water. This air hose is made by a company called Parker, and it's called the Parker Parflex U64 series. Now, this hose is quite flexible as well. You might be wondering, well, why didn't you just use a regular air hose? Quite frankly, the air hoses nowadays, unless you go to the Flexzilla, they're just really not very flexible. This is, you know, just nice and soft. It's got a working pressure of about 125 PSI, but the one thing to keep in mind is the atomizing air you use with an air-assisted airless ranges anywhere from probably about 5 pounds all the way up to probably about 30 at the most for a real hard to atomize coating. For what I use here, about 15 pounds. So that's pretty much all I use here is just a piece of polyurethane tubing. You can find this tubing typically at a local industrial supply house. You can typically find it online as well. MSC has some stuff very comparable to it. Otherwise, just do a Google search and you'll find places that actually sell the Parker Parflex. And if you can't find it, a very equivalent hose to this that's actually just acceptable is the polyurethane colored tubing from usplastics.com. You can get a 1/4 inch polyurethane tube like this here that has a 85A shore durometer, which is a little bit softer than this. This is about a 90 to 95 shore A, and that's just as acceptable. I actually have some of that on my sealer pump that I just replaced not that long ago, and it works just as well as this. So you don't have to have the Parker Parflex U64 series, but if you can get it, it's a really nice hose. And if you pay more than $1 per foot for it, you're paying too much. It ranges anywhere from about 50 cents to about $1, just depending on the dealer and distributor or the online place you find it. And then I found these spring guards from KM Coating as well, where I got this fluid hose from. I modified it basically so it slips around the push ring on this push to connect fitting. This push to connect fitting, they're like one of the easiest fittings to work with. It's toolless. If you gotta replace the hose, you just push in on this little ring here, and then you pull the hose out as you're pushing in. And then to basically put the new hose in or put the hose back in, you just push it in until it bottoms out, give it a tug, make sure it doesn't come out, you're good to go. These push to connect fittings, you gotta be a little bit careful with. You can get a really good deal, and then you can also pay too much. I found a place on eBay, I think the eBay seller is Metal Air, and I got a package of 10 of these for like 20 bucks with free shipping. So you don't have to spend a lot of money on these by no means, but there are other alternatives, but this is one of the quickest and easiest ways. You can do a barb fitting as well, but I really like these because it's just a quick, easy change if you need to replace the tubing. All right, the last thing I wanted to share with you is you might be wondering, why do you have your hoses running through a clear plastic tube? Well, it does a couple things, and I used to do it just to keep the hose set clean, so that way, you know, if I was spraying stain or something, I got all sorts of overspray over the hose that if I was dragging it in an area, I wasn't getting it on the part. Now, it's just a really good practice to keep the hoses clean. And up until recently, I used to always tape the hoses together and then stick them in the plastic tubing. And I could never really figure out why that, you know, even as flexible as this hose is, why was I still having difficulties with the hose wanting to curl up and create a trip hazard. And recently, when I replaced the hose on the sealer pump, I tried something where I actually just put the two hoses through the tubing without taping them together, and what I quickly learned was that the hoses lay flat, and the reason being is you're not fighting the two different flexibilities of the two different materials. So this one here, I did not tape the hoses together. They're in the tube loose, they're free to move around within the tube, and as you can see here, they're like ultra flexible. This doesn't get any better than this, so I can't tell you how nice this is to have. If you are a cabinet shop that finishes a lot of cabinets, or a wood finishing shop that does strictly finishing, and you do a fair amount of finishing regardless of what you do, this combination of tubing is really hard to pass up. I don't think it gets any better than this as of right now. It might get better, but the KX series, this is actually a KX 1.2 fluid hose. It's an 1/8 inch inside diameter, as I mentioned. It's got stainless steel fittings on the end. The cost of the hose, I'm going to talk real briefly about that. The 1/8 inch Exit Flex KX series fluid hose and the spring guards I got from a company in New Jersey called KM Coating. They are an Exit Flex distributor for Exit Flex hoses. Exit Flex hoses were originally developed in Switzerland, and I think this is actually made in Exit Flex USA, which actually could be KM Coating. I'm not 100% for certain, but a 25-foot KX 1/8 inch fluid hose with stainless steel fittings, I paid $57. I felt that was a really good deal because that PA series I got from a Kremlin distributor branded as Exit Flex, I paid probably about 70 bucks for that with stainless steel fittings. So I saved about $12. You can get the PA series as well from KM Coating, and it's the same price basically. I think it's about $2 more. I think it's $59 with stainless steel fittings. So hope you guys found this video somewhat informative and interesting. I apologize it's not a woodworking video, but as you can see here, I got some other crap going on here, and I just wanted to take a real brief moment to talk about this and let you know what I have discovered. So, all right, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Questions and positive comments are welcome. Thanks for watching.